The house was silent, wrapped in deep darkness, yet something felt wrong. Her heart was beating faster than normal, the kind of feeling a mother gets. No sounds of footsteps, no doors, no voices. Then she noticed a thin, bright line of light stretching across the hallway floor. It was coming from under Ethan's bedroom door. Ever since his father died 2 years ago, he had become quieter, more responsible, almost a grown for his age. He went to bed early, woke. Seeing that light made fear rise in her chest. She stepped into the hallway, moving softly as if the house itself might break if she walked too loudly. Memories rushed through her mind, Ethan as a little boy chasing fireflies. Ethan falling asleep in his father's arms during movie nights. Ethan standing beside her at the funeral, holding her hand tightly while tears rolled down his face. Since then, grief lived in their home like an unwanted guest. Some days were quiet. Some days were heavy, and some nights were the hardest of all. As Margaret reached Ethan's door, she heard it low voices, just heavy with feeling. Her breath caught in her throat. Ethan wasn't alone. Fear mixed with confusion. Her mind rushed through 100 possibilities, none of them good. She raised her hand and gently knocked. The voices stopped instantly. Silence stretched for a long moment, thick and uncomfortable. Then slow footsteps approached. "I can explain." Margaret pushed the door open farther, and that was when she saw her. Claire, the young woman. She was sitting on the edge of Ethan's bed, her hands shaking in her lap, tears running down her cheeks. Claire had moved into the neighborhood after her husband died in a car accident last year. She was quiet, kind, always polite. She brought food when Ethan was sick and helped Margaret with yard work once when her back hurt. Margaret had always thought of her as a sweet girl who had been through too much too soon. Seeing her there in the middle of the night made Margaret's heart pound. "What is going on?" Margaret asked softly, though her voice trembled. Claire stood up quickly. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Turner. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Ethan stepped between them slightly, nervous. "We weren't doing anything bad, Mom, I promise." Margaret looked from one face to the other. "Then why are you both crying?" No one answered right away. The silence told her everything. Ethan finally spoke. "We couldn't sleep." "We? We're talking about what?" Margaret asked. "About Dad," Ethan said quietly. "About how much I miss him. About how empty the house feels sometimes." Claire wiped her face. "And about my husband. About waking up every day and realizing he's not there." Margaret's chest tightened. She felt their pain like it was her own. She understood that kind of loneliness. Nights could feel endless when grief kept the heart awake. "We just didn't want to feel alone anymore," Ethan whispered. Margaret closed her eyes for a moment. She wasn't angry. She was scared. Grief had brought them together in a way she hadn't expected. Two young people, both hurting, both searching for comfort in the quiet hours of the night. Margaret opened her eyes slowly. "Claire, it's very late. You should go home now." Claire nodded quickly. "Of course, I'm sorry again." She walked past Margaret toward the front door, her shoulders shaking softly. Margaret watched her leave before closing the door behind her. She turned to Ethan. "Sit down," she said gently. He sat on the bed, his head low. "You've been holding so much inside," Margaret said. Softly, "You don't have to be strong all the time. But some nights it hurts too much." "I miss him too," she whispered. They stayed like that for a long moment, mother and son holding each other in the quiet room. The sadness in her eyes. The way Ethan looked at her with concern and care. This wasn't just two people talking. And that frightened Margaret more than the late-night visit itself. She knew how grief could make people feel close very quickly. When pain connects hearts, emotions move fast and strong. After Ethan finally calmed down, Margaret stood up. "You should sleep now," she said. Ethan nodded. That night, the light under Ethan's door was gone. The house was dark again. But Margaret felt like a door had opened that couldn't be closed. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet. Two broken hearts had found comfort in each other. The night had revealed longing. Morning came quietly, but Margaret had not slept. The events of the night played again and again in her mind like a broken film. The soft light in the hallway, Ethan's pale face, Claire's tears, none of it would leave her thoughts. She stood in the kitchen before sunrise, making coffee she barely touched, watching the sky slowly turn from dark blue to soft gold. Grief had taught her how heavy mornings could feel, especially after long emotional nights. Ethan finally walked. In his steps slow, his shoulders low. His eyes were tired, but there was something else there to fear, mixed with hope. "Mom," he said quietly. She turned and gave him a gentle smile. "Sit down." He sat across from her at the table, twisting his fingers together. For a moment, neither spoke. The house felt like it was holding its breath. "I didn't mean to worry you," Ethan said. I don't sleep anymore. The nights feel empty." Margaret nodded. "I know." He looked up, his eyes shiny. "Claire understands. When we talk, it's like the pain gets lighter." Margaret took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "But emotions can grow fast when hearts are broken." Ethan swallowed. "I think I'm starting to care about her, not just as a friend." The words hung in the air. Margaret felt fear for him, fear of heartbreak, fear of rushing into feelings born from sadness. But she also felt understanding. "You're not wrong for feeling that way," she said gently. "Your heart is trying to heal." Tears rolled down Ethan's cheeks. "I don't want to lose her." Margaret reached across the table and held his hand. "And I don't want you to get hurt. That's why you must move slowly. Be honest. Be respectful. No hiding things." He nodded. Just then, a soft knock echoed through the house. Margaret stood slowly and opened the door. Claire was there, her face pale, her eyes nervous. "I'm sorry to come so early," Claire said. "I couldn't stop thinking about last night. I didn't want you to think I was doing something wrong." Margaret studied her for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." They sat in the living room, the sunlight filling the space between them. The tension was thick but gentle, like a storm about to pass. Claire spoke first. "Ethan helps me breathe again. When my husband died, everything felt dark. Talking to Ethan makes it feel lighter." Ethan nodded. "Feel the same." Margaret listened quietly. Then she spoke. "Pain can connect people deeply. That's not a bad thing. But it can also make feelings grow faster than they should." Claire lowered her eyes. "I don't want to cause trouble." "Not," Margaret said kindly. "But I want both of you to protect your hearts." The room grew quiet. "Care about each other," Margaret continued. "Support each other. But don't rush into something just because loneliness is loud." Ethan reached for Claire's hand gently, then looked at his mother for permission. Margaret nodded slowly. "That's fine," she said, "as long as everything is open and honest." Relief washed over their faces. "Thank you," Claire whispered. From that day on, things changed, but not in a bad way. Ethan and Claire spent time together in the open. Walks in the park, coffee in the afternoons, quiet talks on the porch as the sun set. No secrets, no hiding. Margaret watched closely, worried but hopeful. Slowly, she saw something beautiful happening. They laughed again. They smiled again. They spoke about the future instead of only the past. Grief no longer controlled every moment. One evening, Ethan sat beside Margaret on the couch. "Mom," he said softly, "I feel happy again." "Not all the time, but sometimes." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "That's healing," she said. Claire became part of their life, helping with dinner, bringing flowers for the table, listening to Margaret's stories about her husband. They were no longer just neighbors. They were family in a way. Months passed. The pain didn't disappear, but it softened. One afternoon, Ethan and Claire stood in the backyard watching the sunset. "I used to think love was gone from my life," Claire said quietly. Ethan smiled. "I thought the same." Margaret watched from the window, her heart full. That night she realized something powerful. The night she woke up in fear had become the start of their healing. What began as tears in the dark turned into hope in the light. Sometimes love doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives gently through understanding, patience, and shared pain. And when it does, it doesn't replace what was lost. Simply teaches hearts how to live again. Margaret whispered to herself, "Thank you." Not just for the love growing between them, but for the peace returning to their home. The house that once felt empty was now filled with soft laughter, warm meals, and quiet happiness. The night that scared her had given her son a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Margaret slept without fear, knowing that even after loss, life still had beautiful chapters waiting to be written.